It's my pleasure to introduce Joe Kissell, author and publisher of Take Control Books. His presentation today is Your Online Privacy. Joe is a best-selling, award-winning, hyphen-overusing author and technologist. His company bought Take Control Books back in 2017. He writes about a variety of interesting things, including Mac and iOS devices, and enjoys making complicated topics easy to understand. He's also a dad, husband, editor, computer geek, cook, punster, amateur scientist, storyteller, martial arts, and he's a dreamer. He likes to think of himself as a generalist rather than a specialist. Joe grew up in the US, married a Canadian, spent more than 5 years in Paris, and now lives in San Diego. Joe will give us practical advice that we need to handle common online privacy problems and to develop a sensible online privacy strategy customized for our individual needs. I will now turn the presentation over to Joe.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here. It's a delight to be with you virtually today, and we are going to be talking about online privacy. It's a big topic. A number of years ago, when I mentioned to a friend of mine that I was going to be writing a book about online privacy, he said, "Well, that'll be a short book," as if to say, well, online privacy is a myth. You can't have any. Well, there's a certain amount of truth to that, but there's also a surprising amount of stuff you can do. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of those things today. I wish I could give you a comprehensive strategy for everything involving online privacy, but since our time is limited, I will instead refer you to our website, takecontrolbooks.com. We have a book on online privacy, as well as many, many other tech topics. Some of them, as you heard, are specific to Macs and iPhones and iPads. A lot of them, including this one, are platform agnostic. So whatever types of devices you use and whatever your needs are, I'm sure you can find lots of cool things there. So here's what I want to say about online privacy. First of all, it's not a fixed thing. Almost every day I see some story in the news about, well, there's been another password breach, or, Google did this, or Facebook did that, or some exploit was found. Oh no, this router is no longer safe to use. Stuff is changing all the time, and just as bad things come up all the time, good things come up all the time too. You'll also see stories about, well, Apple did such and such to improve online privacy, or whatever. So I'm going to tell you a story about what I think you should do today. But this is something you need to keep up with. You can't just make one-time changes and expect your privacy to be protected adequately for all time. You need to kind of keep up with what's going on. I also want to say that you, as my friend sort of implied, you can't have total or perfect online privacy. I tell people, if you want complete online privacy, don't be online. I mean, don't ever touch a computing device of any kind. Don't touch a smartphone. Don't touch any object with a computer or a Wi-Fi connection. And that's almost all electronic objects these days. But that's okay. I think that what most people want is not total, like go live in a cave kind of privacy, but rather they want control. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. We are talking about the ordinary privacy needs of ordinary people like you and me. So if you're Edward Snowden, you need more stuff than I can help you with. If you are a billionaire, or if you run a major company, or if you're a celebrity, yeah, your privacy needs are going to be exceptional, and they're going to go way beyond what I can help you with. But we're going to talk about what most people need, so that you can still enjoy all the conveniences of technology, but you minimize the risks. So when I say ordinary people with ordinary privacy needs, I'm obviously excluding people who are targets of the NSA. We're not talking about how to be absolutely stealth and covert and anonymous online. We're talking about ordinary folks. All right, so a few words that we're going to use that often get confused with each other. So I wanted to be clear on what they mean. People talk about privacy and security and anonymity, and sometimes those words kind of get interchanged, but they don't mean the same thing. So privacy is freedom from observation or attention. So when someone else cannot tell what you are doing. Security is freedom from danger or harm, and anonymity is freedom from identification or recognition. Now, it may seem like these are very similar. Let me, to illustrate why they are not the same and how they relate to each other, both in the real world and in the virtual world, I'm going to use this image. This is a bear. And I believe that bears can tell us everything we need to know about privacy and security and anonymity. So let's say that you go to a zoo and there you are, and there are some bears there, and between you and the bears, there's a moat and there's a wall and there's plexiglass. What we have here is physical security. And it so happens this works in both directions. So you are safe from the bears, and also the bears are safe from you. If you had the idea of harming a bear, no problem. You and the bear are safe from each other. You have security. What's missing in this picture is privacy. The bears obviously don't have any privacy at all. They can see you, you can see them, and not that you're probably worried about bears identifying you and noticing what you do, but you don't have any privacy from the bears either. So here's a situation where we do have security, we don't have privacy. But let's say we switch that and you go camping. And now you are out in the middle of the woods, not a soul around for miles. It's just you and your tent. Maybe you and a companion in a tent. And that's great because you have privacy. The opaque fabric of the tent will keep anybody who happens to walk by from seeing you. And because you're really far away from other people, probably nobody else can hear you either. So here, what you have is privacy. You can do things and say things without other people being aware of them. Unfortunately, what you do not have in this situation is any security at all. Because if a bear comes by, that bear can just swipe through your tent without a second thought, and you have privacy, but you don't have safety. You don't have security. Now, you will also have another thing, and that is anonymity, which is to say that no one will know who you are until the coroner comes and we've examined your remains and we've fished your ID out and we know who it was that was attacked by the bear. Okay, so security, privacy, anonymity, they are related to each other, but they are not all the same thing. Now, it so happens that some of the things we do to keep ourselves safe also give us privacy. So if you are in a room that is very well constructed and it has a locked door and so forth, yeah, that's going to keep out people who might harm you. And it's also going to prevent people outside the room from seeing you or hearing you. So you can get both privacy and security at the same time. But if you are, let's say you're a member of the royal family, and so you live in a castle and there's guards all around, hey, you have great security and you have pretty good privacy too. You definitely don't have anonymity though, because everybody knows who you are and where you are. So I just want to emphasize that although these concepts have some relationship to each other, both in the real world and in the virtual world, you can have one or two without the other. So what about online privacy? We're not talking about bears here. We're talking about computers. So online privacy means a few things. All of us are going to send and receive email. We're going to place orders for stuff online. We are going to chat with people in social media. We're going to voluntarily send all kinds of information to various people online. What we want is for only the people that we intend to get that information to get that information. So it's one thing if I want to send an email to my mom, or tell a very personal story to a friend, or send a message to my doctor online. Of course, I want to do this stuff online. I don't want those people to be prevented from knowing what I have to say. I just want other people to be prevented from knowing that. And even the people that I am voluntarily talking to, I don't want them to get other information. For example, I don't mind that my mom knows about any health issues I might have, but there might be some financial or other personal details that I don't even want my mom to know. So that's the second part, is avoiding accidental transmission of private information. Even though you might use your credit card to make a purchase online, you don't want to post your credit card number in a public forum so that just anybody could see it. And if something were to happen that caused your credit card number to get out, even though you didn't intend it to, that would be something we would want to avoid. And then the third aspect is like keeping out the bad guys, keeping out the hackers. You have your whatever, computers, tablets, smartphones, other devices, they have important and personal, private stuff on them. And you want to make sure that nobody is hacking in over the internet, taking over your devices and getting your personal information. Now, as I sort of implied before, not everyone is at equal risk. Celebrities and very wealthy people have a higher risk because they have more to lose. People with with very few friends and no influence and no money have really a very low amount of risk. But what I've noticed as I have talked to people all over the world about online privacy over many years is that there are two types of people. No, that's just a joke. There are two types of people. Some people worry too much about online privacy, and some people worry too little. I was doing a talk on this very subject at a user group in person several years ago, back when we could do things in person. And one of the attendees said that they were so worried about online privacy, they didn't own a cell phone, they didn't have an email account at all. Just everything freaked them out about online privacy, so much that they didn't really want to, they wanted to touch technology as little as possible. But then, so that would be an example of somebody who worries too much. I would say that's excessive. You need to be able to communicate and get stuff done. On the other hand, there are a lot of people, I think a much larger number of people, who worry too little. Who will just freely enter their personal information on any website without really thinking about it, and who click on links in emails from unknown sources, and who believe and trust everything they read on the web, and who maybe use the same password everywhere. You don't want to be in either of those groups. You don't want to be someone who is just, so overwhelmed about privacy that you can't function online, but you also want to be not paranoid, but like slightly worried, alert. You want to be alert. You want to be vigilant so that the bad things don't happen to you. Now, a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, come on, who cares? I don't have anything to hide. It's not like I'm a criminal. I'm not a terrorist. I'm not a bad guy. Like I don't really care what companies see. I don't really care what the government sees. I don't have anything to hide." And then I say, "Really? You don't have anything to hide? That's great. You want to just go ahead and give me your credit card number. And I'd love to get a copy of your medical history too. And can I read all of your email? And then they kind of go, oh, well, I don't mean that. Well, here are some examples of things that you do have to hide, that anybody does. And this is not an indication that you're doing something wrong or that you're a bad person. We all have private stuff. We should have private stuff. It is supposed to be that way. And these are examples of things that you have at your disposal. They're on your devices that you really don't want to be made completely public. You want some people to know some of these things, but do you really want for anyone who comes along and is curious to be able to tell exactly where you were at any point of any day in the past month, all of your purchases, all of your email, and think about that first item too, contact information. I grew up in the days when the white pages that everybody got delivered to their doorstep listed everybody's home address, and nobody thought anything of it. If I was curious to know where one of my friends from school lived, I would just open up the phone book and I would look up their name and, oh yeah, there they are. And that was considered perfectly normal. These days, the world is kind of different. And most of us, I think, would prefer that our physical location not be, and our phone number not be generally available to the public. But even if you don't mind about that for yourself, think about all the people's names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, and so forth that you have in your address book. Would it be okay with all of them for their information to be made public? And if the answer is no, and I guarantee you the answer is going to be no, way over 90% of the time, it is your obligation to protect not just your own information, but other people's information that you have access to. Well, who are you protecting this information from? Well, boy, the list is long, and in my book on online privacy, I have more than twice as many as these. Certainly, the top of the list by a huge margin is advertisers and advertising platforms, and this is what has been in the news so much. Online advertising is a ginormous industry, and the more advertisers know about you, the more advertising platforms know about you, the more precisely they can target their ads, thus increasing the likelihood that you're going to buy their stuff. And so they will go to incredible lengths to learn as much about you as possible, and they really don't care how private you consider your information. They want to know it all because that's where the money is. Now, of course, there are lots of other categories. You might have a vindictive ex. There might be random hackers in Russia or China or wherever that are just, they're trying to wreak havoc, or they're trying to scam you, or they're trying to sell you stuff. Insurance companies too. You want to get life insurance policy. A responsible insurance company would say, well, let's go first check this person's Facebook page and see if they do like a lot of skydiving and extreme sports and stuff like that. This actually happens, so you could, by the stuff that you put online, you can be putting yourself at risk. And honestly, government law enforcement, it's of course, that's on the list. But in my opinion, they're way down there as a threat for ordinary people. If you're not a criminal, they're really less of a threat to your online privacy than some of these others. All right, so we know what we want to hide and from whom. How are we going to do this? Well, step one is spring cleaning. It's spring. Let's do some spring cleaning. And there are a bunch of one-time changes you need to make. You should go through your browser settings and make sure that any option that you are offered to increase your security, you've set that. You should make sure that you have changed any really rotten passwords you have, or passwords that you reuse everywhere, to terrific, unique passwords. You should make sure that you go on any social networking sites you use and bump up your privacy settings there. If you go to a website and there's an option, do not sell my personal information, yes, select that option, definitely do that. You're going to want to look at your mobile devices too and make sure that all of those have the best privacy options possible. Again, you know, we'll get into some details in a minute, and there are more details in the book if you choose to pick that up. But do a little audit of yourself. Look at your browser, your router, your mobile devices, and start investigating all the privacy features and see what switches need to be turned on or off. And that's just a one-time thing. It takes you an hour, and then, you know, that doesn't mean you're perfect for all time, but you're in pretty good shape for the big things. Second aspect, though, is you want to develop better habits. Now, which habits you develop will depend on how you use your devices and where. For example, if you work in a location with other people around all the time, maybe not all of whom you trust 100%, you should get in the habit of logging out when you step away from your computer. Don't give anybody else a chance to sit down and see what you've been up to. Now, if it's just like you at home alone in your computer, well, that's not an appropriate habit for that setting. But there are some things you will need to do a little bit differently from day to day. But the most important strategy is to think. What I want to do today is sort of help you to be aware of some things. I want to just make you pause for a moment before you type anything into a field in a web browser. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying to think before you do, to think before you email something, to think before you share any sort of information online. I want you to just pause to consider what the ramifications could be. Now, there are many, many, many aspects to online privacy. You know, we have 25 minutes left, so I'm going to talk about mainly three areas, three with a little extra. I'm going to talk about your internet connection, that is how your computer, smartphone, tablet, or whatever device connects to the internet. I'm going to talk about web browsing, because that's a very, very big area. A lot of us sort of live most of our lives in web browsers. I'm going to say a few things about email, and then there might be one more rather important area that I will indicate as a bonus tip. So let's start with your internet connection and how to keep that private. Now, I will say that in general, things today are a lot better than they were 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. It was about 10 years ago, I was writing a book on security, and I decided to go to a library and open up my laptop and use some hacker tools that are freely downloadable by anyone, and just sort of sniff around on this public Wi-Fi network and see what I could find. And oh boy, did I find some juicy stuff that's just floating around out there in the ether. Well, you know, people and devices and operating systems and software have gotten smarter and better since then. So it's less likely that you're going to have such extreme risks as you once did. But if you are ever using the internet in a situation where you do not control the whole local network, your risks are definitely going to be higher. So let's talk about situations where, you know, you're at home or you're at your office and you're using your own network. make sure that you go into your base station or router's settings and turn on WPA. Now, WPA is, there are different versions of it, different flavors of it, and I could tell you, well, this one is better and worse, and there's some limitations to this one, and none of them are perfect. But basically, turn on whatever you can. Wi-Fi protected access, or WPA, does not by any means give you perfect bulletproof security, but it prevents you from being low-hanging fruit. It prevents random casual hackers like me sitting with my laptop in a library from seeing what's going on in your Wi-Fi connection. It will mean that you'll have to enter a password to connect to your network, but almost all modern devices will remember that password. So you enter it once and then you don't have to think about it anymore. Now, if you are not at your home or office where you do not have control over the network you're using, you can't turn on WPA, or you're stuck using somebody else's password or whatever, then I suggest using a VPN. Use a VPN whenever you connect to the internet in public, whether it's with your cell phone or a computer or what have you. I'll say a few words about virtual private networks in just a minute. And of course, turn on your computer's firewall. This is actually a less important thing now than it was a few years ago. Because of the way most home and office networks are set up using NAT, there are already significant barriers to outsiders getting in, but it can do no harm, and it's worth a couple of clicks to turn that on. So let's just give a little graphical illustration here of the internet up at the top, up in the cloud, and there's some websites and apps up there. And down at the bottom, there's you sitting in front of your computer, and your computer is connected by Wi-Fi to your router or some other router. And that eventually goes to your local internet provider, and then the internet provider is connected to the internet. So as you can see here, all the lines are dotted. This is just a normal, ordinary, unprotected, unencrypted Wi-Fi situation. So other people, ghosts, hackers, people driving by with laptops, can also see those Wi-Fi signals. It's not hard. I've done it. So any unencrypted information that is being passed back and forth, other people can see. So if you turn on WPA, or encrypted Wi-Fi, here's what changes. The Wi-Fi signals going between you and your device and that router are now encrypted. They're now in green. So what that does is it mostly keeps out the random hackers trying to get at your information via Wi-Fi. Now, notice that all of the rest of those lines are still dotted gray. So if anyone were able to tap into the connection somewhere else along the path, they could still see what you're doing, but at least you have eliminated part of the threat. Now, a virtual private network means there is some server out there on the internet that you have an account with, and when you log in, you use their software, and you log into your VPN on your computer or mobile device, a secure encrypted tunnel is created from your device through your router, through the ISP, and all the way up to that VPN server in the cloud. And what that means is there are now fewer places that someone could hack in and see what's going on. Now, even though the Wi-Fi signals, the radio signals may or may not be encrypted, it doesn't matter, because all of the information you're sending is going through this VPN, and it's all encrypted. So even though the Wi-Fi signal itself isn't encrypted, your data is. So that's, in a nutshell, the value you get out of a VPN. Now, there are, I don't know, hundreds of VPN providers. There are many, many of them out there. And the first thing I want to say is a lot of them are really shady. I'm sorry to say, there are a lot of really shady VPN providers out there. Now, if you go to a respected site like the Wirecutter, which is run by the New York Times, or PC World, Mac World, some like actual legit major publication where the people really do their homework and they do real testing. You can find some recommendations for reputable VPN providers. Here are a few: Mulvad, IVPN, Encrypt.me. I mean, there are many others, and I do not mean to say that these are the only good ones or anything of that sort. These are ones that have popped up in professional recommendations that I found, and so I would consider those to be trustworthy. But the one thing you shouldn't do is go into your web browser and type VPN reviews, because what you will see is a ton of sites that will, they will recommend their favorite VPN provider, and they look like they're real reviews, but they aren't, because these are all driven by affiliate links. And what happens is these sites will give their top ratings to whatever company gives them the best affiliate commissions on signups. And they have nothing at all to do with the actual value of these services. In many cases, they're not even tested at all. So just be super, super careful where you get your information about what VPN to choose. All right, moving on to the web. Let's say that I have dealt with my internet connection, whether through an encrypted Wi-Fi or a VPN or both. But what about using the web specifically? Well, my first piece of advice, which I recognize is going to be a little controversial, and by the way, this will not be the last piece of controversial advice I give, is don't use Chrome. Now, I could give you a lot of reasons for not using Chrome, but the big one is it is a privacy nightmare. Chrome is made by Google, and Google's entire business model is based on advertising. And in order to make their ads more effective, they use every means at their disposal to suck out as much information about you as they can. It's built into Chrome's very design. And so if you want if you want to improve your privacy while browsing the web, step one is don't use Chrome. Now, I mentioned Brave here. Brave, Vivaldi, there are other browsers that are based on the same open source core as Chrome. They're based on the Chromium engine. So the web pages will look the same. And most of the features you like in Chrome will still work the same. And you can still use the same plugins, extensions as in Chrome. But because Brave in particular and some of these other ones have eliminated like the bad stuff, you will have a much, much better privacy experience. Now, I just happened to glance over at the chat as at this moment, and somebody's asking about Firefox. Well, Firefox is certainly better than Chrome. I will say that. Firefox is another one that, because it's based on open source, there are different sorts of different versions of Mozilla-based browsers that have better or worse privacy stories. A browser called Tor, which I'll mention in a minute, is an example of something that is based on Firefox, but it has been customized to remove potentially bad privacy stuff and to add more good privacy stuff. So Firefox can be fine, but you do need to go through the settings very carefully and make sure that you're not giving away anything you don't want to give away. And I would say the same thing about Safari. If you're a Mac or iPad or iPhone user, it's a good browser, but it might require some tweaking to really get your privacy to where you want. Of course, cookies are one of the means by which advertisers track you, and not the only means by names, not the only way advertisers track you, but this is one of the mechanisms that's used to see where you're going, as you travel the internet from site to site, to keep track of where you're going and what you're doing. And all browsers have some mechanism that lets you disable third-party cookies. Now, first-party cookies, that is where you go to a site and that site sets its own cookies. Those are fine. Those are very important and useful for doing things like shopping and maintaining your preferences. But what you don't want is cookies that are set and read by third parties, such as advertisers. There are many browser extensions that block ads and tracking. And my favorites honestly sort of change from week to week. And I don't want to make very specific recommendations here. But let's just say there are lots and lots of free add-ons you can get that will not only block cookies, but will also block some of the other techniques that advertisers use. Now, in ad blocking, if you might just want to block ads because you don't like looking at ads, like you find them distracting. That's not really the reason so much that these tools exist. They may be annoying, but in the process of displaying ads, these advertisers are also collecting information about you, and it's the collecting of information part of it that you're really trying to avoid. If you are not already using a password manager, something like 1Password or LastPass or Dashlane or RoboForm, to store your passwords, you really should. I recommend a third-party password manager rather than the one that is built into your browser, partly because they tend to be much more powerful, but also because they let you switch from browser to browser without losing any of your passwords. In any case, usernames, passwords, but also other pieces of crucial information. It could be credit card numbers. It could be, social security card number. It could be just notes to yourself that are sensitive. Any sort of information that you want to keep very heavily encrypted and out of anybody else's hands. The password manager is a very good place to put that. And of course, they help you browse the web more easily too, because they will fill in passwords for you when needed. They will generate new passwords when you set up an account on a new site. And they will also help you avoid phishing attempts by verifying that the site that they're about to autofill the password for is the real site and not a fake one. There are lots of search engines. Most people use Google and some people use Bing, and there are a bunch of other ones. But I try to avoid Google as a search engine wherever possible, because again, Google really, really, really wants to know what you're searching for, because they're going to keep a record of that. That's going to help them target ads at you. If you want a search engine that does not that does not keep track of what you've searched for in order to show you ads, try DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo.com. You can also set that as a default in pretty much any web browser. It is my default. It is most of the time, it's just fine. There are some situations in which it's not as good as Google, but it is way, 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 way better in terms of privacy. So don't voluntarily give Google anything more than you need to. Back when I started writing about online privacy, it used to be the case that it was sort of a crapshoot whether a site that you go to was encrypted with TLS or SSL. Last several years, the vast majority of sites have that little lock icon in the address bar now. That means that anything going between your device and that particular site is encrypted, it's safe. Now, of course, that doesn't affect any other sites or things happening in other apps. But I'm happy to say that is the norm. But if you happen to go to a website that doesn't have one of those locks, you be very, very careful about what information you enter. Now, a moment ago, when I was talking about Firefox, I said, well, there's a version of Firefox called Tor, and also this feature is built into Brave. Tor used to stand for, let's see, I've lost it, the onion routing. The exact name has escaped my memory, I'm sorry. But anyway, onion routing. And the idea of onion routing was like, a bunch of layers. So what happens when you use either the Tor version of Firefox or Brave in its Tor mode is this. It's similar to the VPN that we saw earlier, except your computer is going to make an encrypted tunnel between your device and any one of thousands of different other people on the web who are also using Tor. So you can opt to set up your computer. This doesn't happen automatically, but you can opt to set up your computer as something called an exit node. And that means that your computer will be one that is randomly chosen to be the last link in the chain between somebody else's connection and a website or app. So the point of using Tor is that nobody anywhere along that chain, including the website that you're ending up at, will be able to know who you are or where you are. Your device's IP address will indicate where it is located, but the website will only see the IP address of that computer that is actually connecting to it, and it would be a random computer somewhere in the world, could be different every time. So using Tor will, I'm going to just tell you, slow down your internet connection a lot, and it will make some features not work right. But it does give you quite a bit of additional security and thereby privacy. Sorry, I just realized the slide I was talking about was not the slide that I was using. Okay, so here's Tor. All right, the slide I was showing you a moment ago was just SSL with a connection between your computer and a single website. This one is a little bit clearer in that you are connecting through your ISP to some random computer within the Tor network, somebody else's computer basically, and that computer in turn connects to a website. All right, that's all I'm going to say for now about the web. Let's turn to email. I love email. A lot of people don't, but I do. I find email to be the mode of communication that is most suitable for my particular personality. I like it. Of course, what I don't like is spam, and I especially would not like it if people other than me and the recipient were able to see my email. So a couple of tips here. First of all, if you are like me, someone who really likes email, you still ought to have a moment of thought before you use email, before you send an email message. Would this thing that I'm about to send to this person be better done in some other way? Should I instead use an end-to-end encrypted chat mechanism, whether that's Apple's iMessage or it's Signal or it's WhatsApp or something else? Is this something that shouldn't go in email at all? Because you only have limited control over email no matter what. If you have decided that email is the right method, and the person that you are communicating with is agreeable, there are various ways of encrypting your email. Now, all modern email clients can use an old system called SMIME, which is okay, but it's kind of a pain to set up. You can get plugins that use PGP or GPG, which is easier to use, but again, it requires that people on both ends have that same software set up. There are also a bunch of email providers, such as ProtonMail, that have inherently end-to-end encrypted email. But what you have to keep in mind with encrypted email is that once your message gets to the recipient, you no longer have control over it. Maybe it's safely made its way from here to there, but what if that person then loses control of that information? They post it, or somebody reads over their shoulder, or it gets put into a backup or something, that information can still get out. And that's why I say, yes, you can encrypt your email. It's a bit of a hassle, but perhaps you should consider whether email is even the right way to do certain sorts of communication at all. So just remember, you can control what you do, and you should, but you can't control what happens to your email once it reaches its destination. Now, I hinted earlier that there was going to be a bonus tip. Yeah, we're going to talk about your local internet connection and web browsing and email. There's one other thing that is actually kind of the biggest thing. You're not going to like it. And I want you to brace for this. You're not going to like it. But this is actually my number one tip. Number one out of everything for increasing your online privacy. Are you ready? Yeah. Number one tip is don't use Facebook. And I'm quite serious about this. Of all of the advertising platforms out there, of all the social media sites, so out of all the big tech companies, Facebook is so far and away the number one offender when it comes to violating your privacy in every imaginable way, that honestly, the very, very, very best thing you can do to improve your online privacy is not to use Facebook. Now, I know how important Facebook is to a lot of people, including some people in my own family, and there are alternatives, but the alternatives might not work for you if your friends and family members aren't also using them. But I do want to say, consider whether it's really worth it for the benefits you get out of Facebook to be giving away a vast amount of information to them. Now, if you do continue using Facebook, I could at least suggest use it in a browser. Don't use the Facebook app on your mobile devices. Don't use Facebook Messenger app especially. Use it in a browser so that you can turn on browser extensions and privacy settings that will prevent Facebook from doing the worst of its bad stuff. Those of you who use iPhones and iPads may be aware this last week, new version of the operating system 14.5 came out, and that doesn't prevent you from using the Facebook apps, but what it does is say, now, are you really sure that you want Facebook to collect this piece of information and this piece of information and this piece of information and this piece of information from you? And you have to explicitly agree to all that stuff. And there's so many pieces of information that Facebook wants. They don't need it. It doesn't help you. It only helps them. So painful as it might be, that is my suggestion. Just don't use Facebook. Now, whether apps or services you do or don't use, whatever you decide about your privacy settings or whether something's going to go by email or some other method, I want you to please just take away with you this final mantra. It's like the slogan in Las Vegas. It's slightly different. What happens on the internet stays on the internet. And all I mean by this is that once you have put some sort of information online in any form, you can never, ever guarantee that all copies of that everywhere have been deleted. There is always a chance that somebody else has a copy of that and it can spread. And that's why I urge you, before typing anything or connecting to anything, not saying don't do it, but just saying, think about it and consider what the consequences could be. So I wanted to show you this one last time. This is a book in which I talk about everything that I've said today and way, way more. It's kind of out of date, but I'm going to be updating it in a couple of months. And if anyone were to buy it now, they would get the update for free. So again, takecontrolbooks.com. Take control of your online privacy. And of course, you can see all this information later in the recording. And in the downloaded show notes. So with that, I would like to know I'm just at my time limit, but I'd like to see if there are any quick questions.
Move my mic down. One quick question. Is there, two, is there a safe one-step setup to simplify privacy settings for your browser?
The short answer is no. The slightly longer answer is that if you use a privacy respecting browser such as Brave, then you will get the majority of beneficial settings right out of the box. But whether that will be tailored to your particular preferences and needs is another question. With really anything, it does require a bit of effort to review the settings and make sure that they are customized to what you in particular need.